Back to the Beginning has officially concluded. The final Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath show is done, and I definitely want to talk about it. This is a huge monumental moment in the heavy metal community, and it'll be remembered for quite some time because of, obviously, like I said, the final Ozzy Osbourne performance, the final time Black Sabbath, and with all 4 original members live together on stage performing their classic music. And all of the star-studded performances that were happening throughout the entire show that lasted for hours, pretty much all day long, it felt like at this point. So many bands, even supergroups, were forming together to perform a variety of their own music as well as covers, and then of course concluding with Ozzy performing 5 of his own songs from his solo career, and of course 4 songs with the original 4 members of Black Sabbath. There's a lot to talk about, but the main thing I want to focus on realistically is the era of Ozzy and his final performance, and there's a lot of things to say about this. Ozzy has been struggling with his health over the years. He's been trying to perform. He retired a few years ago, and there was discussions about finding a way for him to perform somewhat again in a way, or at least a final performance, and now we have this event, Back to the Beginning, and it wasn't just concluding Ozzy Osbourne's live performance and him actually, being out there on stage before really retiring. It was to conclude that, but really to conclude officially Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, years ago, feels like pretty much a decade ago about this point, but a little less than a decade ago, they concluded. But Bill Ward, the drummer, was unfortunately not a part of it due to a lot of things. But there was always this discussion about one more time, all 4 original members of Black Sabbath performing together again. And it happened. They performed 4 songs. We got War Pigs, N.I.B, Iron Man, and of course Paranoid to wrap it up. And honestly, it's bittersweet. It is, at times, you can tell, there's a little bit of rust, if you will. And it's not so much their fault. They're really getting up in age. I looked at Tony Iommi's age just alone. I think he's 77. And I'm pretty sure all of them are definitely in their 70s for sure. I think Ozzy's 76. But they still perform together, and they put on a damn good show. Now, for Ozzy specifically, you can tell he was putting all of his effort. He can't stand, so he's sitting on a throne, still being the Prince of Darkness, but he's sitting on a throne because he physically can't stand to perform, but he still has that voice. Sure, it's not up to the level of what we've been expecting before he really retired, but the voice is still somewhat there, and he was really pushing and putting all the energy into it. However, you can tell he was exhausted. He was tired, but he's pushing through his medical stuff. He's pushing through his, I think it's Parkinson's is what he has. He's pushing through it, and he's delivering on a performance that hopefully everybody there who watched it live, and people who were watching it on the live stream and everything, and watching, of course, things after the fact, can see, regardless of what he's going through, he's still pushing through and gave one final performance. Now, there was some discussion from people stating that why didn't Black Sabbath, and Ozzy specifically, why didn't they perform more songs when it finally came to Black Sabbath? Ozzy's health. They already made it very clear he's not going to be performing a lot of songs, and I think that's why a lot of bands were on this bill, so that they could be covering more Black Sabbath songs throughout the night, because you had bands performing at least one Black Sabbath or Ozzy song. Mostly it was mostly Black Sabbath covers within their set. So bands early on had 3 songs in their set. There was at least one Black Sabbath cover. And then later on, when it came say Metallica, right before Ozzy went on, Metallica performed 2 Black Sabbath covers. So you got to hear more Black Sabbath throughout the entire event, because when we actually got to Ozzy and Black Sabbath, you're not going to be hearing a lot of the songs because they physically can't do it. And there was some discussion about how it's just going to be easier on all of them, not just Ozzy, but just all of them in general, especially when it came to the 4 members of Black Sabbath, to not perform a huge set. And with how many people were a part of this in terms of artists and, bands, because there was a lot of people that were showing up artist-wise, like musicians, that were there for themselves. They weren't there with the rest of their bands. That's why there were supergroups that came along and all that. But it was really smart, and I think well thought out in terms of who all was included here. It's crazy to say that this is the end of this chapter. It's the end of Black Sabbath, a band that has, I think, defined a genre. And there can be a discussion all day about who really is the founding, what's the founding band of heavy metal. And you could point to a number of bands, but I think most people will point to Black Sabbath specifically at kind of building the foundation that we recognize and know. Because them performing the 4 songs they did tonight, or at least was last night as I'm recording this video, War Pigs, N.I.B, Iron Man, and Paranoid. Those songs are classics for a reason. And you listen to those songs, just those 4 that they performed specifically for the show to kind of conclude and wrap up the era of this band, the end of the band officially. Those 4 songs have so many things in them, especially War Pigs, how long and excessive and how layered that song is from way back when it was first written. You look at those 4 songs specifically, but you can look at individual ones, but those 4 songs show so much influence to seeing all these bands that were performing there in person and all the bands outside of their performance that have shown Black Sabbath as an influence. You can hear these songs in some sort of way, the riffs, the drumming, the vocals, the bass, all within these bands throughout the entire globe because of what they did. And even look at all the covers that were played throughout the whole entire event from other, band members and the supergroups they were doing. Like, you see all those covers and how those songs influence them. And even James Hetfield from Metallica said, if it wasn't for Black Sabbath, we wouldn't be here. Now, is that true? Because you had other bands that influenced the members of Metallica back when they first formed. Sure, but I think Black Sabbath is... if they weren't around and they never existed, I don't know if the genre of metal would be the same. I definitely wouldn't. It wouldn't be. So this is it, and I think it was good for a good cause, because this whole entire show was basically for charity. Any of the proceeds or anything the bands earned went to a variety of charities that were all set up. So sorry about that. It's late at night. I shouldn't be up still recording, but here I am. But it all went to charity, and it all made sense. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, and it really is bittersweet that this is the conclusion of Ozzy performing and Black Sabbath, but at least we got one more performance from Black Sabbath with all 4 members. Because they toured excessively without Bill Ward. When they reunited and everything years back when they put out their final record and toured and concluded the band at that time. Bill was not a part of it. They tried to make it work, it just didn't happen, unfortunately. So, it wasn't the best performance, but it's probably going to be one of the most memorable performances of them, and Ozzy, of course, with his own solo stuff too, because it's the final time that we're going to hear these songs live from these members, from these people, that helped define a genre. So, yeah, what did you guys think of the Back to the Beginning event? What were some of your favorite performances? Let me know your thoughts below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Talk to you guys soon. Peace out.